This week we're looking at a special feature movie, a real time classic in a sense of a real great Western movie. It was back in 1975. Take the Hard Ride was its name. Its two main stars were two American football greats as well in their own right. Jim Brown played Pike and Fred Williamson played the one and only Tyree, and I'm delighted today to be joined by Fred Williamson, the gambler himself, who played the role of Tyree in 1975. First of all, Fred, an absolute honour to talk to you, and I suppose Take the Hard Ride 1975, such a long time ago now. Does it almost, are the memories faded?
No, I mean, it was a great project for me and Jim. It was a perfect project for us too, because we're both very competitive. And in real life, we compete with each other in everything, you know, because his career and my career mirror each other. So we're always fighting for that little recognition and that little space. So this was a perfect vehicle for us. We got to fight. We got to show off our manliness. If you notice in the movie, nobody won the fight. I mean, that wasn't going to happen. Jim wasn't going to beat me up in the movie and out. And he wasn't going to let me beat him up in the movie. So it was a perfect vehicle for us.
And you choreographed your own stunt scenes for that fight. You did everything yourself.
Oh, yeah, we had to. There was nobody in Hollywood that could double me or double Jim. You know, we look like we could still play the game. There's no black stuntman in Hollywood that looks like me or Jim. So, but we were very happy to do our own stunts because that's part of the motivation of being in the movie business, to be able to continue our athletic career and be an actor at the same time.
Yeah, and I suppose, Fred, in times of the 70s, you were sort of breaking barriers and breaking trends in relation to that. And it was really a Western sort of movie where two African-American stars, African-Americans were the main stars of a Western sort of movie. It sort of really bucked the trend for a time in America that was just going through change as well.
Well, I've been breaking the rules all my life, man. I've been breaking the mold. I've been breaking that mold that they try to fit me into as a black person or as a black human being way before the movie business. But that's something that I never allowed myself to fit in. I'm not a black actor. First of all, I'm an actor. And I made that very clear in one magazine article, Variety. I took a full page ad out in Variety with a picture of me sitting holding my cigar and said, Fred Williamson is not a black actor, Fred Williamson is an actor. So I've been trying to make people to understand that for years, you know, but you do what you have to do. My image is like Clint Eastwood, Charles Bronson. Are they white actors? They're white? No, they're action stars. So that's what I am. I'm an action star. So whatever I do, I'm always been the first. If I'm gonna do what I do, when I came into the industry, I called a press conference, and the first thing I said was, I'm coming into the industry, but you can't kill me. I got 3 rules in this movie business. You can't kill me in a movie. I have to win all my fights in the movie, and I get the girl at the end of the movie if I want her. You got to do 2 out of 3 of those things. Now, I know they weren't going to do all 3.
You didn't get the girl in this one.
No, but I knew they're going to give me 2 because I'm not going to sell for anything less than 2. So if I want 3, then I got to make my own movie, which I started doing. You know, I've made 20, 25 of my own movies that I did the whole threesome. But in Hollywood, I know they don't want me to die anyway because they might bring me back for a sequel. And I'm not going to die anyway because I can't explain to my fans how some guy 5'8" or 5'7" beat up the Hammer. There's no way I could explain that to my fans on the street. So that wasn't going to happen either.
And I suppose, Fred, it was the final film of Ronald Howard. And what was he like to work under in terms of the Take the Hard Ride? And what did you think of the whole concept of the film, from the writing to the material? I know you shot an awful lot of your shots. So everything was done out in Spain, I do believe, out in Andalusia and the Gran Canary, and all those scenes were shot.
Everything was done in Spain, but you know, my goal is always to become international. So this was one of the many films that I've done in Europe. And the director was Antonio Margherite. When he did the film, he introduced himself as Tony Dawson. So
Okay.
Tony Dawson was his American name. Antonio Margarite was his Italian name. That's who he really was. So he was a friend. I knew him before. So we had a good time because he understood my personality. He understood Jim. He knew there was going to be conflict, and there was conflict on the set. So he let it roll. He let it happen, and it worked out.
And Fred, in terms of the character itself, Tyree, a sort of real smart talking, sort of smooth sort of a player, a real sort of poker style player, keeps these cards close to his heart, but knows how to witty and sly, knows how to outmaneuver people, and obviously a good marksman as well, as we've seen in throughout the movie.
Yeah, but think how boring it would be if it was two macho guys just beating up each other and walking around being tough guys. So I knew I had to play a different character than Jim, which is okay because I'm much smoother than Jim anyway. He's a little rough macho guy around the edges. I'm always a smooth guy anyway. So I created this character to be the offset of Jim. That's what made it work. You know, when I see me spinning his gun, and then he looks at me really funny, but he had already taken the bullets out, and so he made it. The combination worked because I wasn't trying to compete with Jim. I was giving Jim his space to do what he wanted to do based on the character that I was giving him. So he was reacting to the character that I gave him, and I was reacting to his machoism by being, I'm Tyree, you know. So I had this flair that he didn't have.
Yeah. And I suppose, Fred, one of the most iconic scenes in the movie was the gambling scene at the start. And you mentioned that you did your own stunts for the choreography scene. Did you do your own stunt for that snake scene as well?
That snake scene scared me to death,
Okay.
but they shot it. That was not my feet under that table with that
Okay.
bag pulling that snake out. No, sir. I would have had to have some real bullets in my gun if I'm going to stick my foot in a bag with a snake. No.
Yeah.
So I had a stuntman foot. That's it for the snake. Other than that, it's me and Jim all the way rolling and tussling in the sand and riding a wagon and all that. That's me and Jim doing the whole thing.
And I suppose every sort of primary sort of characters need an antagonist, and the antagonist in this movie was the great Leo Van Cleef, who played the character Kiefer, sadly no longer with us. A real great in terms of Western movies. He was renowned for them all throughout his life, and Leo Van Cleef, he always came across as real polished, real slick sort of a character that was just so in tune with the whole Western scene.
But what a combination that made. Me, Tyree, smooth talking, Jim, the macho, Lee Van Cleef, another macho. We face off on a trail. Jim and him are looking at each other like they want to kill each other. I'm looking over with my cigar, smiling. And then I got to say to Lee Van Cleef, which way are you moving? That way or this way, right? So they finally, without a word, Cleef said, okay, and turned around and rode away. And then I turned to Jim and said, is there something between you two? Because I didn't have nothing to do with it. I didn't know Jim had a history with him in the past, which it wasn't really explained, but Jim had some history with him in the past that was negative. But it didn't matter to me. I was Tyree. Either you're going to fight him or you're going to fight me. Which way are you going to go? Right? So it all played out, man. With everybody not being a macho and everybody bringing something to the table that was different, it worked out very well.
And I suppose it's hard to say, another actor, sadly no longer with us, but a martial artist expert, you all remembered for Enter the Dragon, Jim Kelly, a renowned martial artist, played the character Kashtok, and obviously he played a mute sort of ally sort of character, but even from the start he demonstrated all his acrobats and aerobics throughout the sort of movie as well, and a real great sort of character in terms of the success of the film.
Well, we had a little difficulty deciding how Jim would fit into a Western,
Okay.
So we had this discussion and we finally decided that Jim could be a half Indian, being raised by Indians. So his martial arts and his kicks and all that stuff would fit in. And that's how we worked it out, is that Jim was part Indian. That's why he didn't ride a horse. You know, he ran everywhere. Every time we look up, Jim was on the top of a mountain looking at us, and we're going, look up there. There he is up there. Right. So we made it work.
And those horse sort of scenes you mentioned as well, riding through the desert as well. You mentioned apart from the snake scene, you did all your stunts. Did you actually do the horse racing as well?
Yeah, well, that was my first cowboy. You know, I've done about 5 or 6 westerns. I'm off to my next project is a western. Once we get this virus out of the way, I'm going back to Spain to do another western. So riding a horse was something. But first of all, you never ask an actor, can you do something? Because there's nothing we can't do if the part calls for it. So I had never been on a horse, and they said, you know, when I first made my western, you ever been on a horse? Yeah, I've been riding horses for years. And they said, okay, good. And after we finished the meeting, I ran to Staples and rented some horse trainers and some horses. I must have rode for about 3 weeks. By the time we got ready to shoot the movie, I was a horse rider. But you never ask an actor what he can do, because they can do everything.
They can do everything. And I suppose, Fred, the initial reaction to the movie at the time, it was a great reaction. It sold throughout. The sales were up throughout most of the world and throughout Europe, and it went down really, really well. But I suppose after time, people sort of forgot about it as such. But in the initial years, when it was released from 1975 up to start 1980, it got great reviews. And I suppose with time, it sort of slipped back through the embers. But it really was a cult classic for its time.
It was a cult classic because it did not fit into the mold of a black film or a black action film. It was a good Western film, which is the kind of films I try to make. I make sure that they don't categorize my film as black exploitation. You know, I mean, they look kind of silly if I'm in a film and I'm the only black person in it and everybody else is white stars and they want to call it a black exploitation movie. That makes them stupid. So I stay away from putting myself in a situation where they can call my film a black exploitation movie. That's not what I'm after. That's not my audience. My audience is worldwide. It's not a ghetto audience. It's not a black audience. It's worldwide audience.
And did you have a big budget to work on in terms of Take the Hard Ride, being out in Spain? And how long were you, tell me offset in terms of the time you spent in Spain, Andalusia? Where did you put up? How long were you there in terms of shooting? Were you looking at 10, 12-hour days? And were you talking 2 to 3 months, or how long was it? And were you away from your family for a good time?
We were there about 6 weeks. The hours didn't really matter. When you enjoy what you're doing and you're doing it as a favor to somebody, 10 hours, 12 hours, we don't really care. You want to get the job done. You want to get it done. Let's get that last shot in, even though we're 10 hours, but just get this one shot that makes the next day shorter. So let's finish this. And most of the time, my family is with me. You know, I don't really, if I got an 8-week shoot, I'm there for 4 weeks, and I bring the family over for 4 weeks. And then from there, we stay in Spain and spend all the money that I made in the movie. That's my mode of operandi. Especially when I go to Europe, I just leave it there, man, because it's a good place to be. It's a fun place to be. And it's a little different than here in America. So we like spending time in Europe and away from here and enjoying the fruits of our labor. It's a good thing.
Yeah, and I suppose, Fred, one thing that struck me doing my research about this movie is that the CEO City set is actually still standing to this day in Gran Canaria from the movie back in 1975. That is still there, roughly 50 years on, the set from CEO City. So that probably is an amazing thing. You just don't hear about stuff like that.
It's Elmira is where it is. And that's where we're going. As soon as this virus is out of the way, we're going back to Elmira to do another Western.
And I suppose, Fred, in terms of the movie itself, in terms of the writing and the production, what sold you? Was it just that? Was it the writing, production? How did it come about that you got involved in this sort of project? Was your agent recommended it to you, or was it by chance or by fate or a good luck story? Or
No agent, because I don't have an agent. All the work I do and all the work I find is on my own. I knew Antonio Margherite, who was an Italian person, and I'd done movies in Italy, Inglourious Bastards, Black Cobra. I've done several movies before. And so it was a good idea, he thought, to bring two well-known Black actors into a Western and capitalize on the popularity of blacks in a movie without making it a Black movie. It was a Western movie, so it's kind of hard to call a Western movie a Black exploitation movie, especially when you got me, Jim Brown, and Jim Kelly. It's going to be an action film. So the idea of putting all three of us together in a movie and making it work, other than Three the Hard Way, which we had done, which could be called a Black exploitation movie because we were killing white people who were doing negative things to Black people. This would not no way fit into that genre. It was a Western movie, bad guys, good guys, guys with machine guns, us with pistols, a beautiful girl. It was a good action film, and it fit right into the time without being categorized as a Black exploitation movie.
Yeah, and I suppose, Fred, one thing as well, it was a good Western movie. There was also really good elements of comedy throughout the movie as well, in terms of goofy sort of characters and goofy sort of plots. And it almost felt like the main character, Pike, couldn't trust anybody, from even the girl Catherine was trying to run away with his mom. Everyone left, right and center had their own plots or their own sort of devious sort of cunning plans. So it almost felt like your best friend is your worst enemy, but is your best friend at the same time. To the two guys, even though he couldn't trust anyone, he needed them to stay alive all the same.
But when you bring two macho guys together, it's awful boring if both guys play macho. Somebody has to give in without being a weakling. The other person just has his own character that's totally opposite than the other person. So that makes the conflict interesting, because every time you look at me, I'm twirling my gun, I'm spinning my gun, I'm doing tricks in my gun, putting it in. Jim is just watching me. So you know, sooner or later, there's going to be a conflict between the two of us. We're going to fight. And then what really happens when I leave him in the cave, he thinks I'm gone because all the bad guys are now descending upon him. You look around and I'm lighting my cigar. And I says, "Want to smoke?" And he says, "You know I don't do no smoking, but I guess I will now." So he lights my cigar, throws a damn match and says, "Run, Tyree," because he's now lit some goddamn dynamite. So we run out of the place. It blows up. We're flying in the air, all down in the water. It's that kind of film that makes it all very interesting, because you don't really know what's going to happen next.
I suppose, Fred, you've had a long career, a real successful career, renowned, brought you all over the world, loads of movies, loads of roles in TV series throughout your life and throughout your career. How does this movie rank in terms, when you look back in your career? Is it in one of your highlights? Is it in your top 5, your top 10 of what you've done in terms of your career? Do you have real proud memories? Do you hold it in high esteem to this day?
It was probably in my top 10 because it was satisfying. What I was trying to accomplish was become an international star, so that I could do a film in Europe, a film in Spain, and maybe sometime do a film in Ireland. And they know who I am. When they see it on the marquee, they go, "Oh yeah, I remember him." That's the kind of career that I've been looking for, and it's the kind of career I've worked at, and I kind of achieved that. I'm pretty well known internationally because of the kind of films that I do. So it was a perfect vehicle for me and Jim and Kelly to maintain your own identity. My character was different from Jim Brown's, and Brown character was different from Jim Kelly. So it was a great vehicle to, express your identity.
I suppose, Fred, it's we have to talk about the female sort of lead now in the character, Catherine Spaak, who played the role as sort of Catherine. Sort of innocent, she crossed like innocent, sort of desperate, but then I suppose a strong-willed sort of woman, and obviously had her own agendas, which obviously cost her but came through a sort of a hard life, a hard background story. But there was no real sympathy from your character to her character.
character Spaak
Yeah.
had a dubious character in the film. So you didn't really know exactly where she came from. We talked about maybe she was a dance hall girl in New Orleans, or maybe she worked as a whatever in New Orleans. So it wasn't, we put her in a situation where neither one of us would have a relationship with her because we both had our negative characters. I had mine, Jim had hers, she had hers, and Jim Kelly had his tongue cut out. So everybody had a negativity around him, you know? And to make it all work, we had to come together, all these people with this negative background. And finally, she showed some sensitivity to what we were trying to do, was to take this money back to a city that needed it. And I think that's what prompted her to react the way that she did, to try to save our lives by pretending she was trying to get away. And we were in a moment of shock until we see the money blowing around on the ground, realizing that she was risking her life for us because she didn't take the money. She was like diverting everybody toward the bad guys.
I suppose, Fred, last two questions from me now to you. In terms of your own character, Tyree, if you had to sum him up in terms of two sentences, if he was put in a dictionary, say, and they left two sentences blank underneath, and they asked you to write two sentences to describe him and of his role in Take the Hard Ride, how would you describe Tyree?
Tyree, tall, dark, handsome, mysterious, fighter, quick draw when necessary. If he decides to come in your way, make a way for him. You never know how he's going to react to you, positive or negative. Just be safe and step aside.
And I suppose last sentences from me to you, Fred Williamson. Take the Hard Ride, a classic film from 1975. And if you were to summarize Take the Hard Ride in a synopsis, what's your synopsis of it?
Take a Hard Ride was a very interesting Western shot in Spain with interesting backgrounds, a very interesting story, more than one character who had their own story. So it was very distinctive. That's the one good thing about Westerns. You know the good guys from the bad guys. You don't have to wait. They get exposed right away. Good guy, bad guy. Take a Hard Ride. We weren't really sure about the good guy or the bad guy because they gave Jim this money to take back to this foreign town far away. We weren't sure if he was going to do it. Lee Van Cleef, we know he knew we had the money. And then you got Tyree saying, soon as we get where we're going, I'm going to take the money away from you. So that conflict carried from the beginning of the movie to the end of the movie.
On that note, Fred Williamson, an absolute pleasure talking to you this evening, sir, to relive your memories of what was a cult classic movie that broke the boundaries in 1975, Take the Hard Ride. We recommend all our audience to go back and watch what was a really true Western movie, great of its era, and obviously complemented by the brilliant acting of Fred Williamson and Jim Brown. Honor to talk to you, Fred, and hopefully, please God, more Westerns from you in the future, and we definitely look forward to them. Take care, Fred.
On the way, on the way. Thank you very much.
Thank you.